Well, I'm glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
Obviously, this isn't your first time at Exhibitor Live.
No, it's only been 23 times.
That's amazing.
That's all.
That's all.
In fact, I'm about as old as you are.
Oh, I don't know about that. I'm almost 40. Okay. So you're still green on this, right?
Right.
Well, it's really great to have you. Thank you so much. Tell me something that you're really looking forward to this year specifically.
I'm looking forward to the evolution of design because there's always a friction between the physical and the virtual now. So how much do they rely on physical design to draw in people, to engage attendees, and how much are they going to rely on AI and digital tools? Now, you might think, well, that's obvious, but the fact of the matter is the bad exhibitors, they use screens too much. The good ones know how to balance it. And I have a saying, screens are deaf. And what I simply mean by that is when you rely too much on just a standalone screen to engage, you've basically lost people.
Absolutely. It's all about the face-to-face interaction.
Face-to-face interaction.
How do you build relationships, real, authentic ones?
Exactly. And that's hard to do in the few minutes you have an attendee going over a show floor, right? So it depends on what's bringing them in. What can they touch in a tactile sense? Are you using scent? How are you communicating with them? How are you telling a story? How are you being friendly? So to me, it's always a battle between those two things. And like I say, the exhibitors that aren't so good rely too much on screens. Sure. Those who get it know the balance, and that's the trick to it.
I love that. So on that same vein, what would be some advice on getting started to try to shift their approach from screens into more personalized relationships?
One, I would always focus on using the physical makeup of the booth to be what attracts people. You're using graphics in a tactile sense, a physical sense to draw people in. Do not create barriers in front of your booth. That do not create an unfriendly visage with your booth in some way. And obviously your designers can speak to what I'm generalizing about.
Sure.
But the point being is many exhibitors do create barriers physically, or they have staff that stands as if they're guarding a nightclub with the velvet rope. That's a killer.
It's all about the flow. That's how I always like the functionality, right? You know, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Right. What is the story that you're trying to tell? And how do you want to tell that story through walking them through the actual physical structure?
Yes. And are you going to rely on a screen, or are you going to engage and give them serendipity? And what I mean by that is they're going to encounter what they do not expect, and an organic conversation can flow from that.
It really can.
So it might be design. It might be a stylized use of your product that you never thought of, but you're using it in an unusual way.
Sure.
Or are you simply creating a kinetic attraction? And by that I mean something that moves, because the human brain is wired to notice movement because predators used to chase us. So we're used to looking for the slightest movement. A good exhibitor knows how to use kinetics to draw people in, to catch them out of the corner of their eye.
Sure.
Again, can a screen really do that? It's flat. And if it's one thing we've learned in the last several years since COVID, when neuroscientists have been studying face-to-face versus Zoom, there's as much as a 10 times greater emotional response to something in person versus Zoom, which we say, of course, but it's that, remember for a while it was virtual events can replace real events. No, they can't.
Same.
They simply cannot do it.
We agree.
We should. But you know, the point of it is that this is an age-old way to meet people and to sell to people, and it hasn't been replaced yet.
What do you think? So as we talk about, you know, face-to-face building relationships, what do you think is something that event marketers are facing as a challenge right now in being able to accomplish that?
I think the demographics are changing. The old guard is leaving. The people in my age group are aging out, and you're getting a new flow of people, a Gen Z, to generalize about it for a moment. But how do you appeal to them? Do you appeal to their feeling about brands, which is they want brands to be socially responsible? They want to be part of the story, not the object of a story they're being told. How do you cope with that? And right now, I think there's a lot of confusion about how best to do it, because with every new generation, there's likes and dislikes, and you've got to grasp it, right? So what worked 30 years ago? Well, it worked really well 30 years ago, but it does not necessarily work now. And that's what I see people struggling with. How to appeal to an oncoming generation without necessarily alienating an older generation.
Absolutely.
Either.
Yeah, the generational impact, right? The evolution of event marketing. Where do you see us going in the next 3, 4, 5 years?
Oh, that's easy. Okay. It's easy because people are going to take the easy way out. They're going to rely more on AI. And they're not going to realize that AI, whether curated or general, will not be the sole answer. You rely on it too much like you do screens. And after a while, it gets predictably boring, or it's too error prone. And the recent research shows that AI cannot stop lying. It cannot stop hallucinating.
Interesting.
It's almost like a human who can't help lying and telling a tall tale when another tale would be better and more accurate. I think they'll rely too much on that. They'll go too much in that direction and not realize it's just simply another functional tool, but that's all it really is. It is not going to sell for you necessarily. So that is where I see people going. But again, we're going to have to pull it back and rely on old-fashioned one-to-one relationships that take time to build. And this is the only kind of place you can do it.
That's absolutely right. That's very spot on. Now, other technologies besides AI, do you think that there are other technologies that are going to reshape the future of event marketing?
Sure. I think things like directed sound, which can only give you sound in one particular part of your booth. It's been there for a while. I think it'll be greater. I think there's an offshoot of AI, which I've noticed at World Expos, which is building your digital doppelganger. And that's building a digital double of you.
Like an avatar?
Like an avatar, except sometimes they don't look human. They look like they could be made of auto parts, oddly enough, or a shadow. And I saw it used in Dubai, but the problem with it is it needs enormous processing power, because otherwise you're waiting 2, 3, 4 seconds for it to catch up with you. And if you're going station to station, and think about 1001, 1002, 1003. Oh, here it is finally. You get a little annoyed. It doesn't work. But it's powerful because you can interact with it ideally.
Oh man, that would be amazing.
Think about it. And in other words, it tells the story to you that the brand is trying to tell, but it's you talking to you, which is actually kind of cool. But again, it relies on the fundamentals of good processing power and good design to make it work. Those are things I see coming down the pike. More than that, though, I think you're going to see a greater and greater emphasis on sustainability. And it was big about 10, 15 years ago, went into a valley, so to speak, and now it's back again with a vengeance. So I think you'll see more emphasis on recycling, recyclable plastics, FSC certified wood, and other things to make your booths out of. And it will be so normal. And I think we'll all kind of start to compete to do a better version of it. And remember, too, this appeals to what? Gen Z, being socially responsible.
Socially responsible.
So again, there's laws, and then just the, if you will, law of the marketplace are going to have to respond to with this. And that's more or less, in a nutshell, what I see coming down in the very near future.
I think those are all very spot on. Of course, you're very experienced in this, and you're very, you have this really beautiful way of explaining what you see and also where you've come from. It's just a really great blend. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Another thought, what would you give in terms of advice to someone new starting to build their career now in event marketing?
Do not underestimate the old-fashioned way of doing something. And what I simply mean is, I'm not saying get off my lawn. I'm saying that while AI and digital doppelgangers are extremely cool and very powerful when they work right, they're simply tools that augment. They do not replace face-to-face interaction. The other part of it, and I mentioned this a while ago, is serendipity. The ability to meet someone you didn't expect, a conversation you never saw coming, something you learned that's completely out of the blue. Serendipity is really part of the reason we go to shows. Networking, yes, just see new products, but also the unexpected. Those are the 3 pillars that you need to build on.
I love the unexpected. That's so true. And it's such a beautiful moment when you have that serendipitous action. It really is.
And you walk away and you don't forget it.
And you don't forget it. At every event, I remember faces, I remember names, and I remember the experience that I had. And I think that's really an important takeaway. Well, wonderful. I really appreciate all of this time.
It's a pleasure to talk about something that I talk about nonstop anyways.
Well, is there anything else that you want to talk about? Because we have the cameras here, and you're welcome to share a couple other.
Well, actually, what I'm kind of interested in is what people are going to do with the new technologies they're seeing. And it's always fascinating to see how they incorporate them. But what I'm getting to is another trend I'm seeing is what I call localization. Now, it used to be trade shows and world expos thought that having local culture was very quaint. It was provincial and kind of backward. But what I'm seeing now is the reverse of that.
Sure.
Exhibitor show a couple years ago in Louisville actually we brought in the bugler from the Kentucky Derby to start. Local culture. Many of the exhibitors work in bourbon, of course, Kentucky, baseball, of course, the Louisville Slugger, and disco balls, because disco balls were a huge product in Louisville, which I thought was kind of cool.
So it's like integrating the DNA of who they are.
Yeah,
and what makes them.
It used to be rejected big time. And so, again, that was the provinces. You were second rate and kind of a rube if you did that. It is the exact opposite now. So what will they work in for Texas, for San Antonio? I don't know. We'll see tomorrow when the show floor opens. Yeah. But I'm noticing that there's a lot of this going on, and it kind of fascinates me. Even in Dubai for the World Expo, the signage, they had Bedouins weave using their techniques and dyes to create the signage for the expo. The benches you sat on, actually they look like abstract art curlicues. No. They're Arabic words spelling out vision, peace, dream, local culture. It works itself in, and it's actually the coolest thing. That's something I'm looking forward to see how these other cities with their trade shows do it. Do they just pretend they could be anywhere? Or do they work in local culture? And my advice would be work in that local culture because people love it. It gives you a sense of time and place that you don't get anywhere else. It's not Disney World. It's San Antonio. It could be Paris. It could be Chicago. Doesn't matter.
It's about taking that pride that city has and integrating it into the story that you're trying to tell. And it makes it even more memorable.
It does for attendees. And again, you walk away feeling like you've been somewhere, feeling like, okay, I saw what Chicago's about. Right. Or San Antonio. I mean, the Alamo is nearby, Riverwalk. So let's work in some of that into the exhibiting. So again, we'll see tomorrow what they do, how many do it, how many take it to heart.
That's great. Another thought, just as we've been talking, is, I've been seeing a lot of a shift or a need or a craving for more activations versus just an actual exhibit or a booth. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that are yes, do more activation. Of course. But again, what it means is it doesn't occur in a vacuum.
Sure.
If you're by yourself and you're the only one doing it, you'll get a crowd. If everyone's doing it, how do you differentiate? And again, you're talking about face-to-face versus technology. You're talking about localization. And then what's the takeaway? What do they take away from it? Did it solve a problem? Did they want to communicate with you afterwards? Did it create an experience that you're going to talk about on social media to somebody? So how much legs, if you will, can you give it that it runs on after the person experiences the activation? And that's kind of abstract, but you can't really analyze it until you see it and you can say what works and what doesn't work.
Sure.
But again, I think it comes back to how are you going to integrate all these potential elements into something? And that's really what you're left with here. Activations, yes, but how boring is it? How interesting is it? How pervasive is it? How did it throw you off a little bit? That's kind of good sometimes.
There's something that I'm thinking about as we come up with all of these ideas. It's almost like we're constantly trying to beat what we did last time. And it's always like coming up with new creative ways to execute better and to, give it more legs for the next time. Where are some, in terms of advice, where can event marketers go to try to find new and better ideas?
Well, I wouldn't say go to find better ideas, as inspiration might be better, because then you take what you see in one context and you bring it to another. For instance, if you went to South by Southwest, you'd probably get some great ideas. If you went to Burning Man, you might, you don't exactly want to do what they do at Burning Man, which involves which involves a lot of weed. But, you might want to bring back that basic fundamental idea. For me, I say try the World Expos, because for 175 years, they've created the exhibiting industry. Everything we do trickled down from the World Expos. So look at how they use tech. Look at the fabrics they're using, the materials they're using, the way they're approaching an international customer base, sometimes millions of people at once. Look to that for inspiration, because it's easy to see what they're doing and then to adapt it, possibly on a smaller scale, of course. Sure. That's my number one choice. Otherwise,
I always say it's like pulling a thread. You might see something, get that inspiration, you pull the thread and you start to really build your own story.
That's a great way to do it. And again, too, look at things like Burning Man and South by Southwest, I say, because remember, the generation coming in, Gen Z, is in some ways festival raised.
Sure, yeah.
They're used to
what they're
festivals.
Expecting.
Exactly. So look to them almost literally to try to recreate some of that positive experience. And then again, look at something like a World Expo to see on the much, much larger, higher upscale what's happening to exhibit to people. For example, with World Expos, you're talking about groups from all over the planet. How do you compete? How do you attract to a multilingual crowd? Experiential architecture that does not rely on text. Look to the expos for how you would appeal to anybody without the use of text. It could be the design of the building, the design of your entrance. It could be anything like that, but that's actually a good test case for how you can pull something like that off.
I love that. You're a wealth of knowledge.
Actually, I just go on a lot about stuff.
We could continue to go on and on. We may need to do a longer episode one of these days. I'll reach out to do that.
That would be my pleasure.
Well, any other quick tips or must-haves that you think this year, as a takeaway from all of this that event marketers need to focus on?
I think the takeaway is to walk the show floor repeatedly.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is it's like a museum. After about 30 minutes in a museum, you just zone out.
Sure.
You need to walk them all and see how they're competing with each other and what are they doing to attract you in. In other words, what are they doing that makes you feel welcome the second you walk by? Is it the paint? Is it the color? Is it the carpet? Is it the staffer? Are they being obnoxious? Are they being too aggressive? Those are the things I look at repeatedly to see how they approach you over and over again. And when I walk out of the hall, I think, what do I remember?
Yeah.
There could be something really great you catch.
What stuck with you?
And yet it goes over your head.
Sure.
There's other things, sometimes they're minuscule.
Yeah.
And yet what happens? You think about that a week later. So to me, you see it, you experience it, compare them to each other. And when you walk out, don't think of it intellectually. Think emotionally. How did I react to it? Did I want to go in there? Was I interested, but something like a force field keeps me out? Or do I play with what they want to do? Emotions are the key to this. Check your emotions and how you're responding to everything from the customer service to the design.
Yeah. Go in intentionally to experience it. I love that.
Indeed.
That's great advice. Well, thank you so much, Charles.
My pleasure.
This has been a wonderful conversation. I appreciate it.
This was a delight and really happy to talk about this stuff all day long. Folks, I'm available for bar mitzvahs too.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was a lot of fun.